Good evening again. My name is Barb Headrick from the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley, and I'll be moderating this candidate forum for District 21 Senate candidates. And we want to thank the City of Fargo for providing the lovely accommodations in the City Commission chamber, and also for streaming this candidate forum live and recording it for playback on the city's Fargo Government PEG TV channel, Fargo 56. And the recording will also be posted on the League of Women Voters Red River Valley Facebook page and on our YouTube page. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that we work to encourage informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major policies, issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. If you'd like to learn more about the League, please visit our website or on Facebook or talk to one of the volunteers here tonight. The League of Women Voters sponsors these candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. As a nonpartisan organization, we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views you will hear expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters will post complete, unedited recordings of the forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan or political purposes. We will, with only 2 candidates, we will get as many questions as we can in, so please keep asking the questions. We do have a number of questions been submitted by members of the public who have been attending these forums that we will go through. But if you've got a new question you would like to ask, please do so. We'll get that into the top of the pile. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions. They'll also have 1 minute for an opening statement and a closing statement. And so when the time runs out, you'll hear an obnoxious buzzer. Please go ahead and finish your thought. It's a little difficult over the buzzer, but it can be done. All right. So with that, we will begin an opening statement with Kathy Hogan.
Thank you. Thanks to the League and to the city for hosting this. This is a great opportunity to discuss public policy. My name is Kathy Hogan, and I'm the current senator in District 21, and I'm privileged to serve with Lori Beth Hager and Mary Schneider, and we've been a team for a long time. 21 is a district with strong neighborhoods. We have Hawthorne and Jefferson and Madison, and now we've actually moved into West Fargo with the Meadowbrook Park area in that area. And the thing I love about our district is the fact that they almost feel like small towns. They each have their own flavor, and it's a beautiful district. In visiting with the people at the doors, I'm hearing a lot about concerns about mental health, child care is a crisis, property taxes, inflation, housing costs are really pushing people to the edge, and crime. These are all areas that I've worked with extensively over the past 13 years, but things have changed. Thank you. We need to protect our resources, both financial and natural. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, is it Klobeck?
Very good. I'm Bill Klobeck. I'm running for Senate as the Republican in 21. I've lived here for approximately 30 years again. I was born just down the street at St. Luke's. I'm a walker, so I walk around the district quite a bit and see what the various problems and things are. I'm not sure exactly what the state has to do with the discussions that go on with a lot of this, but I agree. I think that crime, energy, mental health, affordable housing are top priorities for 21. We're the most diverse district in the entire state, and sometimes we're not getting the resources that we might use in the city level to ameliorate some of these problems. I think I could probably work as well, or perhaps better, with the Republican majority to achieve some of these goals.
Thank you. First question for you, Bill. What makes you the most qualified candidate in this race?
I don't know if I'm the most qualified. I just think I've got a pretty independent way of thinking about things, and I'm a pretty good collaborator. And again, it's a majority of Republicans. We're kind of a pocket of Democrats, which is great. But in order to get things done, sometimes you have to work. Sally's worked with the majority on a number of these things and knows exactly how to get things done too. But it would just be a different voice at the table. She's done a great job.
Thank you, Kathy.
During the legislature, I have really been privileged to serve on all but 3 of the legislative standing committees. I got moved from committee to committee. So it broadened my experience from natural resources and transportation, agriculture. And so I have had the privilege of really serving on many different kinds of committees. My area of expertise, of course, is human services, because for 40 years I worked starting really as a case aide on the floors at the state hospital and ended up being the director of Cass County Social Service for 18 years. So I know how systems work, and I provide technical expertise. As Bill said, I have worked across the aisle very extensively, and most people don't realize that almost 80% of our votes are unanimous because we do work together. And there's a myth that we disagree a lot. And so I think compromise is one of the things I bring.
Thank you. This question will start with you, Kathy. Please explain to us how governing differs from running a business. Does experience in one automatically qualify you to do another? And I assume they mean running for business going into government.
Thank you. I think there are differences in terms of the outcome, because businesses are primarily designed to make money, and governments are primarily designed to provide service. And I think whether it's roads and bridges or highway patrol or law enforcement, government's target is public service for all people. And a business often is focused on making a profit or building a product. And the authority, I think many people in business have trouble getting used to the idea that we have to come to consensus, and that it's a process that's quite different in management. I think it's good to have people with lots of different kinds of background. I like working with the farmers. I like working with the business people, to have healthcare providers, to have lawyers. The broader we have involvement, the better quality of work we do in government. And that's why I think we need a diverse legislature.
Thank you. Bill?
Exactly, and a citizen government that rotates occasionally. I've been self-employed for most of my life, and the difference, I agree with you, however, the difference is that sometimes you have to be a little more innovative in how you're budgeting for things and know when to quit spending, so.
All right.
Dot.
Okay. Along those same lines, starting with you, Bill, what do you believe is the primary role of government?
The most limited interference with people's ability to live their life as possible. Public safety, picking up the garbage, public health, defense. After that, I'm not really sure.
Kathy?
I agree with Bill that public safety, public health, core infrastructure. We have become a country where we assume we're going to have clean water and we're going to have roads that work, and that we're going to, when we turn the power on, that it works. And I think government helps do that. And oftentimes it's public-private partnerships, which I strongly support. But I think the role of government is to assure freedom, because freedom is a core principle in the Constitution, but also safety and the common good. And I would hope that as a country we can assure that people have food to eat and a place to sleep. And I think sometimes we forget that those in many countries are not rights, but I hope in our country they are.
Thank you. Kathy, and both of you have been speaking about the bipartisan aspect of accomplishing goals for all North Dakotans. Can you please give specifics of how you would work to do that? Starting with you, Kathy.
Thank you. I've been doing legislative work way before I was in the legislature. In the 1990s, we worked on a revision of the TANF program when it was federally passed, and Senator Judy Lee and I worked extensively together on welfare reform. And beginning with that, I learned that most people don't come to the table as a Republican or Democrat. They just want to solve the problem. And so Senator Lee and I are sometimes called the Bobbsey twins because we try and do almost every bill we introduce together before we introduce it. And I think that technique of working at the ground level on issues to solve problems is the way to get to bipartisanship. And in committee work, this happens. We get to consensus on almost all our bills. That's why on the floor, often it doesn't end up in a nasty floor debate. And so I think people don't see that, but it does work.
Thank you. Bill?
North Dakota legislature is somewhat interesting, different than the national legislature in that you can propose legislation from the Senate to cross over and all different mechanics. So it's a little different than Rich Warder, who's the chairman of the Republicans and the head of the Senate, is retiring this year, so we don't know who our guy is going to be at this point. And I'm pretty capable of working with a variety of leadership on any number of issues.
Thank you. Next question, starting with you, Bill. Homelessness is a growing problem in North Dakota, particularly for members of our indigenous community. What can the legislature do to deal with this problem?
The Democrats once had a program called CCC. I don't know if that would work anymore. We've got jobs that need to be done. People need to be motivated. Again, I'm not sure it's the government's job to do that. I agree no one should starve or be completely homeless, but maybe we've over-regulated the market so that you can't rent an apartment for under $500 in Fargo without a grounded outlet. And I don't know if there's any state solution to that, but you know, we have to make accommodations for people. I remember the people that would live in the basement of the buildings that had steam heat because at least it was warm in the winter. We had a power plant here in Fargo for years that burned a North Dakota resource. I don't know anyone that ever had soot in their eye or any breathing problems from a clean new coal plant or a different energy source. So I think providing cheap, effective heat would be a great thing for our northern climate.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, homelessness is a growing problem. We have about 1,200 homeless people a night in this community at this point in time. The demonstrated thing that works is providing supportive, low-income housing for people. And there's two pieces. First, you have to have housing first, because until people feel safe and are fed and are warm, and it doesn't have to be fancy, it can be simple, but housing first and then have support services. Because if you've been homeless, you often have major financial issues, you often have health issues, you have mental health issues, and many of the homeless people, actually in some places as many as 40% of homeless people are working and they have jobs, but they can't get through the days because they're sleeping in their cars or oftentimes with friends. So we need to prevent evictions as much as possible because it's harder once you've lost your apartment to get back in, prevent issues, provide housing first and supportive services.
Thank you, Kathy. Would you support, we start with you again, would you support a carbon tax on greenhouse gas emissions in North Dakota?
Carbon and the environment is such a complex area of governance. I spent the day at the Energy Committee today, and it was like overwhelming. I'm not certain that a carbon tax in North Dakota would be effective. I think at the national level that could be, but that might be a layer of government question. I think we need to do really aggressive work to address carbon emissions. And so I think some carbon capture may be appropriate. I think we have done major work on renewables, particularly wind, and then transmission issues. Today we learned about a project where you're going to have small hydrogen plants that can serve a hospital or a safety net. I think we need to have an all of the above approach to energy stability because our energy system is in crisis.
Thank you. Bill?
Hydrogen fuel cells, good idea. We're trying to get set now for the carbon sequestration pipeline. We're going to be the repository for a 6-state area if they get all the permitting going. We're the leader in the nation in both clean energy production. We've got hydro, the silly wind thing that Minneapolis made us do, basically, and then we got to pay to build the corridor for the power to go down there. We have a lot of resources that we should continue to deploy. A carbon tax is probably not a great idea.
Thank you. This one we start with you, Bill. Does public education in North Dakota work, and what needs to change, and does that change include the legislature acting to address the teacher shortage?
Well, I think it works mostly. It's interesting that the kids out in Golden Valley all have straight A's and full scholarships. We just have a problem over here where we have a little different mix of people, and the legislature tried to help out the city of Fargo with the tax issue, and they gave the money to Fargo, and they just went ahead and spent it again, and so our taxes went up again. I think we've got a pretty good education system, a great college system. Kirsten Beasler's done a good job. I think she gives a lot of support to the teachers. Shortage of teachers, pay them more.
Thank you. Kathy?
Thank you. I really believe that public education is the foundation of a good democracy. We need to support public schools with better pay and benefits. Teachers are really struggling right now because our children have so many needs in the classroom. But we need citizens who know how to think. They need to have skills like math and writing. And if we're going to have a stable society, we need to have a strong public education system. I'm concerned about the culture wars and the attacks on things like critical race theory, which really isn't being taught. Those attacks demoralize teachers, and sometimes they do not feel supported. And because it's not a high-paying profession, most people who are doing it are truly committed to the children. And I think without a strong public education system, we won't be able to meet all of the workforce needs we have today and in the future. So I'm a strong supporter of everything related to public education.
Kathy, I think we started, both of you got that one, right? I got too many things in my head already.
It's hard with two of us.
Kathy, we start with you on the next one. A major barrier to home ownership is more than just prices. Property groups buying up homes, driving prices up, and leaving fewer homes available to buyers. What are your thoughts on this?
This is an interesting question because I've heard it in a couple of neighborhoods, including in our neighborhood. People are concerned, and actually I did some research on them. And in the one block where there were 3 homes bought up, and they thought they were turning them into rentals. In the end, they just remodeled them and put them back on the market. So I think as a community, we need, this I think is an example of a local control issue. I think the local control should look at that, and I'm not sure it's a legislative issue, but I think it's happening in Fargo, and I think the local government should be involved in doing that.
Bill?
It's one of those things, where are you going to put your money?
Yeah.
Apparently real estate in Fargo is still pretty good investment, and outside interest groups are going to, we have an anti-corporate farming law. You can't own dirt if you're not a resident, but we don't have it for residential housing. I don't know if there's an easy legislative solution to it. If someone had come up with an equitable idea, I'd be certainly willing to consider it, but
Yeah.
Who's to differentiate between an out-of-state greedy corporation and Doug Burgum?
Next question, we start with you, Bill. What will you do to protect the human rights of LGBTQ plus North Dakotans, especially trans people?
I would think they'd fall under the same auspices and laws as everybody else, treat them exactly the same.
Kathy?
Thank you. I think we have seen pretty clear discrimination for LGBT and trans in employment, in housing, and because they're not protected classes, they don't have any place to go. And I know we have introduced bills for maybe 6 or 8 sessions. I'm looking for a colleague. It's been 6 or 8 sessions. And they don't have protected status like age or race. And I think discrimination still happens with this group, and I think we as a state should try to protect vulnerable people who are treated differently simply because of who they are.
Thank you. Next question, we start with you, Kathy. What are the priorities Fargo needs represented most in the coming legislative session?
Oh, that's fun. Well, my first is childcare. I'm pretty adamant about behavioral health and childcare, and I think in terms of childcare, I have outlined with a group of childcare providers 4 specific steps. I have a comprehensive plan because I'm compulsive. Those of you in the audience know that. We need to increase childcare assistance to low-income families. We need to establish a childcare grant program that will directly pay the child care provider who's licensed for their desired capacity so that they can pay their employees regularly. And it's a base, almost a formula-like payment for child care providers. We need to expand and support targeted early childhood programs for 4-year-olds. A 4-year-old in most of the state who's income eligible for Head Start gets served, but doesn't get served in Fargo because there's not enough payment. I think we need to target early childhood education.
Bill?
The city leaders are pretty good in their lobbying efforts with the legislature to let them know what their current topics are. Again, clean water, cheaper energy. Can we figure out what to do with the Milt Young power plant and turn that into a clean coal plant so we can have cheap electricity? Figure out what the housing issue is interesting, and the high-rise comes to mind as an example of a federal public-private partnership that has gone to hell, basically, and all those people were displaced. And now they can't figure out how to implode the building because someone let a building permit to a building right next door. It seems a little absurd. The towers are still up there, so we need a safe environment. This fentanyl thing is just wrecking us. It's worse than the crack cocaine epidemic or the methamphetamine, which is still around. It wrecks people forever and kills them. And again, I'm not really sure what the state has to do with it, but we should be helping.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Bill. What is your position on reproductive rights, and what role do you think the legislature should play in addressing them?
Not much.
That all?
Yeah, I think so. I have a child and I like kids, but I'm not really sure what the legislature had their law. I'm fully cogent and aware of my body, my choice. I wish that would have applied during the COVID freak out, but, and I'm sure there's exceptions, and I would think that that would be in the individual and the eyes of their God and their doctor. And I'm not sure that I'm comfortable telling other people what to do because I'm pretty contrarian in that regard myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks. Writing laws on any medical practice is extremely concerning to me because of the risk of limiting the authority of doctors to comply with their Hippocratic oath to do no harm, particularly in situations of the life of the mother or rape. I think we could drive many healthcare providers out of the state. Health privacy has been strictly regulated, and I'm concerned that with the changes in particularly the trigger sections of some of the laws that will criminalize abortion, we are going to lose the right to basic healthcare privacy. And I'm really concerned about this. I think, as Bill said, we've had a lot of fights about healthcare freedom in the last 2 years. We don't want mask mandates, we don't want vaccine mandates, but we will force a 10-year-old who's a rape victim to have a baby.
Thank you. Start with you, Kathy. What are your views on legalizing marijuana in North Dakota and why?
Well, I voted against the last two bills that were introduced, and during the last hearing, the people who wrote this initiated measure listened to every one of our concerns and they addressed them. And the measure as it is right now for adult use marijuana, I think, is a well-done measure. It establishes clear standards for safety, how marijuana will be sold and regulated to protect it. And I think we are using marijuana right now. And so I think legalizing it makes sense because then we tax it and we get it out of the shadows. And so I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm going to support the measure. Because I've opposed the last two because there were so many holes in them. But this one I think is a really well done, and I commend the people who wrote it.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea. I think it's a decrim, not necessarily a legalization. It's a little semantic difference.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we don't need any more drug dealers in our community. The previous medical marijuana law had an unintended consequence of concentrating these facilities. And what did they spend? $4 million, and they had to have $1 million bond and the seed to sale thing. And there's 4,000 people with cards, so that's $10,000 a card for medical marijuana in North Dakota. And they're all out-of-state corporations, so I would guess they're engaged in corporate farming, which we have a constitutional ban on. So exactly, the previous weed laws were terrible. This guy's, at least they got it together. North Dakota's the home of the NPL and the referenda. We have the easiest referenda out there. Maybe it's time.
Thank you. Next question, start with Bill, and this is about the other initiative on the ballot. What are your views on term limits for the North Dakota legislature and why?
Well, who was the gal from Minot that served for 432? Brunhilde. You know, if your constituents are happy with you, that's fine. If constituents are happy with Sally, they keep voting her in. I don't think you need to have term limits per se in our. It's hard enough to get people to do this job anyway, and then to add too much to it. And it takes a little bit of experience, as you say. You've had some experience. My dad was the Speaker of the House for 12 years. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, you keep talking to people and you train in new people to how, again, it's a lot of mechanics and procedure to get this stuff done. I think in the city we should have it, but I'm not so sure about in the state.
Kathy?
Yeah, I think people don't realize that legislature serves up to 80 days every 2 years. So in an 8-year term, if we were limited to 8 years, we would only work a total of 320 days, which is about 1 year of work. It takes a long time to learn the process of the legislature and the content of the bills. I think my big concern is this is going to be a transfer of power and authority from the legislative policy branch to the executive branch, because you won't have that institutional knowledge. And it takes a long time to get that institutional knowledge so that you can speak up. And if we turn over all the time, we turn over 25% every single term anyway, so there's a lot of turnover. But I think this is really a transfer of power and authority from the legislative branch to the executive branch, and so I'm strongly opposed to it.
Next question, we start with you, Kathy. Finding adequate child care is a problem in North Dakota. How should the legislature address this issue?
I think the child care issue is because funding is not adequate. So I have 4 principles. We have to expand the level of reimbursement for low-income families because they want to work, but they can't afford to. And one of the things is to eliminate co-pays. People with very little impact still have to sometimes pay $30 a month, and they're struggling with that. We have to establish a child care grant program to subsidize child care providers, and they have to be licensed. We want quality work, but I think similar to the foundation aid program that may cover 20 or 25% of the cost is a model that's being used in some states. I really support targeting early childhood education programs because I think the Best in Class program, Head Start programs, know they work. And if we had programs for all 4-year-olds, it would be good. And we need to simplify the licensing process.
Thank you. Bill?
I think that 1 to 5, the mother is the best teacher. I think we should spend more money on VOTEC schools and making sure that other people can have enough money to be able to do that when they have young kids around the house. You need to provide the safety net for people, but we've got our community has a pretty good breadth of it. I don't know, I'd have to see some more information on what we could spend that would have some efficacy in it. I don't think it's the state taking over the ward of the children or anything, but they're only little once in 1 through 5, and then they're off at school, and before you know it, they're out of college working somewhere, and it happens so fast.
It does.
Little balance.
Thank you. Bill, the next question start with you. Do you support charitable gaming in North Dakota?
We had a party every year called the Charity Ball, and we gave all the money that we ever made to the North Dakota Mental Health Association. We did that
I went to that.
Yeah, everybody did. We had it for 25 years. It was a great deal. So, yeah, gambling. Nobody ever tells you about how much they lose gambling, and gambling addiction can be a problem. I think we have some resources for it. I'm not a big fan of it myself, but it's all right.
Kathy?
Philosophically, I'm opposed to using gaming both for taxes and for charities. In North Dakota, it's sad because we really have become dependent on charitable gaming. And the expansion of gaming over the last 4 years has significantly hurt the tribal gambling because of the complex federal rules they have to follow that we don't apply in North Dakota. I'm concerned about gambling addiction and appropriate treatment services because I think we have an increase in this because of the increased availability. So everybody knows I always vote against gaming bills, but I do like to gamble. Kirsten.
Thank you. Kathy, this will be our last question.
Good, thank you.
We'll start with you.
Sure.
What will you do to prevent gun violence in our state? And would that include any common sense gun laws such as red flag legislation?
Thank you. I think I was a strong supporter of, we had red flag laws in at least 2 sessions ago, and I was a strong supporter of those because I think what we know of the violence, particularly in domestic violence situations and with people with serious mental health issues, guns are often used. And oftentimes people who are victims say, we knew he was going to do this. And if we had a due process so that if my ex-husband came after me and was threatening me, I could go to the court and say, I don't think he should have a gun. He needs due process. He needs a judicial process. But I think we need red flag laws very strictly. I think I personally believe in licensing guns because we license people to drive cars. I think guns are equally important to have regulation. It's a really complex issue.
Thank you. Bill?
The right to bear arms shall not be infringed.
Okay. Is that it? I just want to make sure you're not pausing for effect.
Well, it's a pretty simple premise.
All right. This concludes our question and answer portion of this forum. We want to thank all the candidates for participating. We thank the members of the audience for presenting questions. Thank all of our league volunteers for helping out in the city of Fargo, including the city employee who's running the cameras and microphones for us. And for all of you both here and watching this later, please visit the League of Women Voters voter's guide, which we are co-sponsoring with Forum Communications. It's called vote411.org. This provides answers to questions we have submitted to candidates across the state, in races across the state, as well as an explanation on each of the ballot initiatives on the statewide ballot. And if any of you candidates have not yet submitted your answers, please give me an email and I will get you the access so you can do so. And this voter's guide is also available through any Fargo Forum Communications news website. That when you see their voter's guide, the link that you are going to is to the vote411.org system. You can also find it on the through the League Facebook page. And so we'll start with closing statements, and Bill, you get to go first.
Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters and the City of Fargo for sponsoring this forum. Thank you, Sally, for all of your hard service over the years. Folks, for coming out. 12% of our district voted in a city and primary this June, when we have early voting, mail-in voting, Dropbox vote, and you can vote from your bed practically. 12%. The city. The people that really spend your money, the school board, civics. Let's get rid of this fentanyl in our community. I think that would straighten things out. And I think we know where it is. People live next door to these places. It's the red flag law. You could call the cops and say they're dealing drugs next door. Yeah. Thank you for your support if you're going to support me.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. And it's been fun to spend the hour with my friend Bill here because we like each other. And so that's also nice. And really for the opportunity to discuss complex issues and the needs of the people of 21. Like you said, we have a very distinct district. Public service is not easy. I really appreciate every single person who has stood up to serve at all levels of government, because government really is only as good as the people we elect. I commit to listening to everyone, to working with my colleagues respectfully, to find the best solutions we can possibly find. And I really invite you to come to Bismarck and spend a day with us so that you can see how it works. We have a legislative process that does work, although it's a better bipartisan if we had more balance between Democrats and Republicans, but that's a dream we have. And so I'd appreciate your vote and come and visit.
Thank you. And let's all give the candidates a great round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.